Right now in Nigeria, there is an urgent, incredibly emotional debate raging. The country's facing a profound security crisis that's pushed it to a breaking point. So in this explainer, we're going to break down what leaders are saying about the fear, what's causing it, and the fight for solutions.
To really get a feel for how serious this is, let's just start with the raw emotion. This is a direct quote from a member of parliament, Representative Alhassan Ado Dugwa. A statement like that, well, it just cuts right through all the political noise and gets to the heart of the human cost of this crisis.
And believe me, this isn't just some dramatic phrase. For millions of Nigerians, this captures a terrifying daily reality. We're seeing the fundamental structures of a functioning society start to crumble under the sheer weight of this insecurity. And just look at what this means for everyday life. We're talking about a complete breakdown. The most basic things. Farmers can't get to their farms. Traders can't go to the market. People can't even feel safe going to a mosque or a church or even just traveling on the roads. Kidnapping has become, and this is a quote, a daily affair. And now even schools are being forced to close down. You know, this fear isn't just something people are whispering about on the streets. Nope, it's being said out loud, directly to the nation's leader. Here you have the commentator Hakeem Baba Ahmed making a direct plea to the president, and he's really capturing the feeling of a nation that feels unprotected and just deeply, deeply afraid. So when you have this level of fear, it brings up a really fundamental question. What is a government even for? The whole debate really hangs on this idea of a promise, a contract between the government and its citizens that, frankly, many feel has been completely shattered.
And this idea of a social contract, it's the bedrock of modern government, right? People agree to be ruled, and in exchange, they get safety. This isn't just some abstract theory in Nigeria. It's written right into their constitution. Section 14 says it plain as day. The primary purpose of the government is the security and welfare of the people.
And to drive home just how dire things are, one lawmaker, Honorable Chinda, he reached all the way back to the 17th century philosopher Thomas Hobbes. He used this famous, bleak quote to describe what life is like without security, basically arguing that this is what life is becoming for the average Nigerian today.
And right here, you can just see the massive gap between that promise and the reality on the ground. On the left, you've got the constitutional guarantee. And on the right, well, that's the lived experience being described in Parliament. Fear, uncertainty, and a government that one lawmaker bluntly said is still sleeping while its citizens are scared and terrified. The crisis has gotten so bad that it's leading to this existential question from inside the halls of power. See, when a government fails at its number one job, it's not just a policy failure, it's a crisis of legitimacy. Lawmakers are literally asking, if we can't protect our own people, what are we even doing here? Do we even have the right to govern? Okay, so if you're going to fix something this broken, you first have to figure out why it's broken. And lawmakers aren't just shouting in frustration, they're trying to diagnose the really complex mix of things that are tearing the country apart. What lawmakers are arguing is that it's a huge mistake to try and paint this issue with a single brush. Instead, they see three powerful forces all tangled up together. You've got economic motives, attacks just to grab wealth. Then there's political manipulation, trying to destabilize regions for political gain. And of course, there's the undeniable element of religious extremism. That political piece gets even worse when you look at the borders. One speaker put it in this really powerful way. He said the country's borders, they only exist on paper. On the ground, they're unprotected, they're porous, and that allows foreign fighters and weapons to just pour in, making all the violence that much worse. So, with all these complex threats swirling around, the most passionate plea from the parliament floor wasn't for more weapons or more money. It was for something much more fundamental: national unity. The call is to rise above the very divisions that are so often used to fuel this violence. The plea is to take off, as one speaker said, the toga of religion and the toga of political parties, and instead just wear the toga of Nigeria. But there's a really serious warning here. The crisis has become so divisive that it's actually pitting victims against each other. As one commentator pointed out, instead of uniting against a common enemy, citizens are getting caught in this trap of arguing over who's suffering more, Christians or Muslims. And that kind of distraction only helps the people causing the violence. Okay, so they've laid out the problem, they're calling for unity, but what are the actual solutions being debated? How does a nation even start to fix a crisis that runs this deep?
Two major ideas are really on the table, and they're both aimed at totally overhauling the country's security. First, there's a call to create a dedicated national border force. The logic is simple. If you want to stop the violence inside, you first have to stop the flow of foreign fighters and weapons coming through those borders that only exist on maps. The second idea is a huge shift back to community and state policing. The people who support this say a big, centralized federal force is just too disconnected. Local police, who are actually accountable to the communities they serve, would have better intel, they'd respond faster, and most importantly, they'd have the trust of the people they're supposed to be protecting. The frustration, though, has gotten so intense that it's led to some pretty radical proposals. Representative Doug Weah, the same lawmaker we heard from at the very beginning, he went so far as to demand that Parliament should just shut itself down, stop all work, go on strike essentially, until the executive branch finally takes decisive action. But that idea, it was immediately shot down with a really powerful counterargument. It shows you the immense pressure these institutions are under. The response was, no, we can't shut down. In a time of crisis, the Parliament has to stay open, because it is, in the words of one member, the hope of Nigerians, the one place where solutions are supposed to be worked out. And so, the debate rages on, leaving us with this final, critical question. The problem's been defined, the stakes are crystal clear, and the solutions are being fiercely debated. But for nearly 200 million people, this isn't some academic exercise. It's about survival. It's about when they'll finally feel safe in their own homes again, and what on earth it will take to restore the nation's most fundamental and most broken promise.